Yes, I had been a lifetime athlete. I was a college athlete in the US.
Okay, okay. Did you have any stage in your life when you felt that you were burnt out and maybe you made the wrong choice or anything of that sort?
Yes, yes, I have made a wrong turn here or there.
Today we're honored to welcome Shawn Cooper, a seasoned leader in cybersecurity sales with over 2 decades of experience serving the global public sector. Shawn specializes in delivering over-the-top threat intelligence and data solutions that help safeguard national security. Known for his strategic insight and deep understanding of those complex government ecosystems, he combines technical expertise with a customer-centric approach that builds trust and drives real impact. Beyond his role as a sales director, however, Shawn brings a unique perspective on leadership itself, resilience, and a human side of cybersecurity. Please join me in welcoming Shawn Cooper. If you could give one piece of advice to a younger Shawn way back then, what would that advice be?
That's a good question. This is not a transactional situation.
Hey, Shawn, thank you so much for joining us this evening. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thank you, Joe. Thank you for that introduction. I'm glad I'll make sure I pay you later for that healthy. So yes, thank you for that. Yes, glad to be here.
Great, great. Good to have you here. Well, Shawn, your company is known as Team Camry. Um, Ever since the last conversation as well, I've had a hard time understanding that it's a Dutch word as far as I know it, right?
Welsh.
Welsh. Okay, Welsh. Now, what does it exactly mean?
It actually means Wales. So Cullery is a Welsh word meaning Wales. So
As in the island of Wales or the animal?
as in the island of the country. Yes, so it's essentially Team Wales.
Okay, okay, wonderful. Well, Shawn, before we dive into, the nuts and bolts of cybersecurity itself and the complex world of your business, I just wanted to take a little bit of a step back and rewind a little. I just wanted to ask you, do you remember the first moment for yourself back in the day? When did you first figure out or understand that you're getting drawn to this field, and why did you feel drawn specifically to cybersecurity and not anything else? I mean, you look like a sportsman from what I can envision. You may have been drawn to sports, maybe football.
Yes, yes. So my draw to cyber specifically is really around my personal interest in the next greatest things, something that's not so commodity, so me too, something that's different, something that's interesting, sexy, if you will, than same old, same old. The majority of people would like to walk through. I prefer to walk the road less traveled, as people say. Uh, and yes, I had been a lifetime athlete. I was a college athlete in the US in a American football. But I did play multiple sports most of my life, up until then. So yes, it was good catch.
Okay. Okay, great, great. So, what was your early exposure to the world of technology like? I mean, do you have any experience or a certain incident that basically got you all curious and got you inclined towards cybersecurity specifically, or was it a more general thing?
It was more general and it was gradual. So I got into technology via the network world. Which, by the way, which was none of my education. My collegiate education was none of that. But I evolved to it by some friends and colleagues who were growing into this new thing of networking, um, communications. And that sort of gradually moved me into, as things have started to open up in front of me, the next best thing, the next thing, the next thing. And immediately prior to my cybersecurity beginning, I was dealing with an application called video teleconferencing, of which they call unified communications today, um, with a company named Tandberg, a Norwegian-based company, in
Mhm.
their US federal division, uh, in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And one of their big things was, against the competition, was that they were able to marry legacy communications, if we go back to when we were all doing dial-up and analog telephony, to marrying that to the new world that was just beginning of IP telephony via, Cisco networks and things that we live with today that's very common. So, so their niche in the market was being able to blend those two worlds together and bring us to the modern day, of which now we're doing video telephony, user experience on our computers now. So,
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. So, I mean, around those days, was there anyone specific, like a mentor or maybe a boss or even a peer, who maybe helped you see the broader impact of your work, and which would be basically beyond your core job role, beyond beyond the technical side of things, someone who may have greatly impacted you in going beyond that certain desired amount of impact that you want to have, something more.
yeah, I don't know if there's one specific individual, and maybe there seemed to be a menagerie of different people who helped to open my eyes, especially as I moved from the commercial sales roles that I was in into the public sector roles. And then I became really with the video conferencing and providing these brand new, all across the entire global agency that they were in, these US government agencies. I got to understand what their mission was about and supporting the citizenry. And it opened my eyes to say, okay, I'm improving how these people can communicate so that they can provide the services that my taxpayer money is going towards. And then there was sort of the evolution of that as I moved into cyber, where it becomes more of a law enforcement driven task to help them with. So that's been sort of the evolution of my feeling of pride in what I'm doing and what I'm helping to offer to all these public service agencies now globally outside of just the US.
Okay. Well, if we just, look back, or if you look back, do you think that the motivations back then, in the first 5 years of your career towards cybersecurity or the technology world, were different as opposed to what drives you today? Has there been a change in your outlook, in your perspective towards it?
Oh, certainly, certainly.
Okay.
The the early parts of my career, even when I moved into technology. So when I moved into technology, I guess as you mentioned, the first 5 years, when I moved into technology, I'm trying to do the math in my head. Yeah, it was probably my first child was born and I got married in year 6. Year 5 of that, technology, transformation, I got married, and year 6, my first child was born. So, yeah, just my general approach to life changed quite a bit from when I started in corporate America in the, late 80s. Yes, as you can imagine, I'm a completely different person across the board, much less, in my approach professionally.
Absolutely. I'm guessing that's just that, initially you start off as you want to explore this or maybe look at that. And once you're married, you have a sense of responsibility developing you, and that kind of makes you pursue something more long term, something more, you're in for the long haul, that kind of thing. Did that impact you?
Yes, certainly as best, that was in my control, to make it long term, yes. Uh, and really looking for something that will hopefully continue to inspire me to be there. Because now I realized, to your point, it needs to be something stable. It needs to be something that's going to provide the necessities that are afforded the responsibility of being a husband and father. All the other things that go along with that, outside of my, you take off that cape, that Superman cape, and I've got to go to work. So it's yes.
So, Sean, you mentioned legacy before, but now, even in those early years, were you thinking about, the long game in cybersecurity? Or did that interest develop over time, specifically in cybersecurity? Uh, it kind of grows on you. Is that what happened with you?
Yes, yes, it kind of grew on me. The legacy, I can't say that I was actually thinking completely about my legacy up front. Um, I'm always thinking about how I'm perceived, how I present myself, that I am not an embarrassment to those whom I deem important to me. But as far as my legacy within cybersecurity early on, that was not part of the equation. It grew on me, especially when I began to create a reputation for a certain level of delivery, if you will, and performance. So yes.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, the interest grew. Okay. So, and before we, before we change our line of conversation here, I'm just wondering, let's say if you could give one piece of advice to a younger Sean way back then, what would that advice be, in terms of career and following a certain path?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that I could uh, encapsulate that in a single answer, but yeah, there's a lot I would tell the younger Sean. But I think one of the things I would do is I might have said to go back for an advanced degree sooner and see what that might have done to enhance the path. I don't know that it would actually done anything, frankly, but I think from a internal level of confidence building in my respective ability as it is perceived outwardly, it might have
Mhm.
changed my thought process earlier. But as I said, I don't know that it would have had any effect in the path. But I think from my own perspective, because I'm a creature to, well, as most people are to a certain extent, how comfortable and how confident I am in a situation will drive my performance.
It sure will. Absolutely. It pretty much does that for everyone. Now, in your career early on, most people feel, they're double-minded. They're maybe a certain burnout or a doubt. Did you have any stage in your life when you felt that you were burnt out and maybe you made the wrong choice or anything of that sort, that you self-doubted or something?
Yes, yes, I have made a wrong turn here or there, and sometimes not of my own volition, but and sometimes assisted by that, because I've been a part of, which in hindsight were actually benefits to me, but in the middle of the event, it seemed like I did something the wrong way, or I made a bad decision in the company that I chose. So I've chosen, actually, there's two companies that I chose to work for that were okay, but they really didn't inspire me as much as I thought they would. Um, they were not exactly the sexy type thing
Mhm.
that I like to provide and sell. Um, and then, excuse me, they wound up being acquired. So I wound up having a nice golden parachute to go on to the next thing, which is probably what part of the global or the universal plan for me was anyway. But in the meantime, while I was in it, it seemed to be thinking, this is not a good idea. This is not I'm not happy to come to work every day all the time, if that makes sense.
It does, it does. So you're basically talking about the excitement, the love for your job, satisfaction, a sense of achievement was missing. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. Yeah, it was, it was doing things and you're making money and providing, but it was not fulfilling to me, and I really didn't feel like I was actually providing anything other than just what everybody else was doing. So again, I didn't feel like I was being unique. How's that?
Okay, okay. Well, you've spent a lot of time, in fact, decades, working with the public sector, um, from what we know. But we also understand that, it's not about just pitching a product or making a sale. It's about more complex. It's navigating people, understanding emotions, understanding the slow moving systems. So when did it actually hit you that you need to know how these decisions are made in these public sector agencies, government agencies, and how you need to understand that what priorities they have, what makes them decide for or against a certain product or service, and that very understanding that psychology is just as important, if not more, to the sales process of a certain product. When did you come across that kind of a thought process?
So that I would say was probably comparative to today, early in my public sector life. Moving into that space from the commercial space, there was a little bit of a learning curve and understanding a lot of that. Now, having had a childhood that allowed me to be in internships in my congressman's office and on in Capitol Hill, allowed me a little background on how things could be very political, and how policy drives behavior. So once I saw some of my peers, and I'm always learning. I'm always trying to learn and glean things off of what's successful for someone else and what didn't work for someone else and why. I would say when I was involved in that video conferencing company, I got to learn how to navigate, how to look for landmines, look for allies, and understand what the motivations were for them to be allied or to be against me, and navigate all of those people. As some sales training I'd been through would align someone who's supportive of me as a fox and someone who's against me as a weasel. So you need to sort of learn and figure out who they are. Once you understand what the mission of that agency is, you can then begin to build your plan of action for them towards that line, and then find that ally or champion, if you will, who will help guide you around those landmines. So it was something of great um, benefit to me. And I will say there was one watershed moment. I had already kind of learned that from peers, but I had one specific champion who literally took 2 hours and whiteboarded who is who is what, and who you can say you're aligned with me, who you can't say you're aligned with me, and why, to get
Okay.
plan of action through, and how it would make it so that everyone had some skin in the game, or felt like they had skin in the game, even though he architected the whole thing.
Okay, classroom style. Okay, wonderful. Well, let me ask you this. So how do you even build trust with, agencies like the CIA, which we see in the movies? That's pretty much our exposure to those agencies, and the FBI, that are basically they're guarded in nature. They're a closed like a fort. So is there a certain mindset that you need to change to approach these relationships that you build over your sales cycle? Do you need to have something specific that you're looking at?
I wouldn't say there's necessary for me, especially in a role like I'm in now, and I think maybe one or two other roles I was in, where I will tell you exactly what you need to hear, whether you want to hear it or not, and how we may be able to help you. In those roles, you really need to have them know you, know of you, understand that they were probably doing some background on you before they ever talked to you. So they know what they need to know about you or the company you're working for. And when someone brings you to the table, a like-minded person or someone that you know who knows them, and then they're looking at you, you have to make sure that you are confident in what you're providing.
Mhm.
There's certain parameters that they require, as far as manufacturing that cannot exist if you want to business with them. There's really nothing different, but yes, to your point, them being closed, it's hard for me to reach out to them without having mutual connections to have it work.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I'm sure you've come across maybe instances of certain people who couldn't crack a certain sale or maybe, couldn't venture deep into the process of pitching their product. So in your experience, where do you feel that most vendors go wrong when they're dealing with public sector agencies like the CIA, the FBI, and the others that we know of?
I would say if anyone has difficulty, and I have had peers and others, colleagues who have this issue, is that then they come primarily from the commercial world. Uh, have to address the public sector, no matter what country it's a part of. It's the same mindset that you need to have, that this is not a transactional situation. You're looking at this as a long-term relationship. Your reputation, your personal reputation, will ride on this relationship going forward. And when you're looking to propose something that they're going to acquire, you need to look at this as a long-term thing. Do not try to do anything that would be questionable, that you're going to think you're going to make a fortune and get fat off of these people because they have more money than most of the commercial entities have, because you'll be done. With that company will be done, and you personally will probably be on blacklisted for the so, yes, it's a different approach. It is not every nail looks like a hammer. Everything looks like a nail if you're a hammer. It's not that approach with
No shortcuts.
yes, yes.
Eh,
And you have to take time.
uh,
This process of approval, it's a longer process.
I'm sure your patience is also tested at some stages, isn't it?
Yes, it is absolutely, it's a joke, running joke with my successful commercial counterparts, that they can do things transactionally in 30, 60, 90 days, whereas unless the house is burning down on the public sector side and I'm the fire department, it's never gonna be that quick. It's going to be 6, 9, 12, and in many cases, like the gentleman who whiteboarded for me, that was 2 years.
So, Sean, tell me this: like in these high security ecosystems, how do you balance between meeting technical requirements that um, are supposed to be relayed over or met and aligning with the ethical and political boundaries that you have to keep in mind? How do you reconcile both of that?
Well, all of that is actually in my world is part of my everyday, uh, um, makeup, if you will. Uh, Part of the job is, understanding the mission that we're addressing, in plural, the missions that we're addressing. The environment already allows you to have to be, as it sounds rudimentary, but on your best behavior, and you know, and that the company itself has already addressed many of the things from a policy perspective with privacy and other issues. And then of course you have to sort of exchange documents that say, this conversation is between us, as it applies to said relationship and or what we're going to do going forward. So there's a level of that provides some being cautious about how and what you do.
Right, absolutely. So did you actually see certain moments maybe in your team or someone else, where too much speed that actually could have created more risk than the value that it would provide in the reducing the timeline of said sale?
Yes, and it's not often, and typically it's when there's an individual or entity that is not used to the environment. Maybe they are there as a specialist or an overlay of some form or format, and you have to address them and say there's a certain level of decorum you have to use here that you cannot use in the other side of the world or the commercial world, if you will. So we've had a few, just a few, nothing, excuse me, huge, but yeah, had a few instances as, hey, you can't do that. Can't do that. That's, you're going to put us in a vulnerable position, business wise and or legally.
Yeah, legally too. Yes, absolutely. And that's stuff that's not really taught in the classroom. You've got to chew on it as you go along. I think when you look at something or someone and you say, "Hey, they didn't approve it," or they didn't believe in it, as opposed to it's very interesting. Now with all these stakeholders changing, budgets shifting, and even changing political winds. So I wanted to ask you, what does progress really look like in a typical sales cycle with a product as heavy as yours and as impactful as yours? And specifically when the win isn't instant. So how do you know that things are even moving in the right direction? Because you're maybe having a lot of meetings and seemingly nothing's really going forward. So how do you figure that out and how do you stay in step with that?
Good question, because it's not, I can't say it's the same in every instance, and it really depends on the actors as part of the movie, if you will. So, it is, often we know that we're moving forward if we continue to have discussions, because one of the things when I first go into having conversations with, potential, clientele, everything we're gonna do is going to be addressing what you would consider as success criteria for us continue to create a business relationship that goes forward. I said, and I'll allow you to even, I will throw you the keys to the car and let you play with what we propose that may fit what you're looking to do or accomplish, so that you can do it without the interference of my voice or anything that you might think would influence you in moving, and do this of your own volition. And while I'm saying that, I said the only thing I require of you in payment is feedback prior to
Okay.
making a purchase. So that feedback comes back, and I said I want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, all of the above. And at that point, typically, people will be, in most cases, very candid. What it does, what they like, what it doesn't do that they don't like, if there's any of that. And then I said, okay, so if most of it is, there's 10 things and there's 7 things that are good and 3 that are bad. And I said, well, I would ask, pointedly, well, what is the next step? Is this something that you think you would be interested in doing, since you have given us 7 positive points, all of which, according to your success criteria, check boxes. We don't check them all, but we check boxes. What's our next step? Is there something that we can move forward with? Is there a budget process that we can meet that's within a certain time frame, or what are we looking at? So I pretty much will ask them to tell me. Tell me, I'm not gonna guess, but to your question, if we get to that point, I'm feeling pretty good about it. It's not a slam dunk until, I get ink on paper, if you will, but, I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Well, let's step into that part of the story and that really doesn't really get told straight, like the actual threat landscape. Because most of us, when we hear about cybersecurity, we're probably envisioning, ransomware, a breach, and some major catastrophe happening. So, was there a moment in your life when some things went out of control? Maybe the system bent a little too far, and trust between you and some person within the agency started to break, or some incident that happened when the actual consequences felt more human, not just technical. And how did that moment impact you? How did it change the way you think? And how did you handle it?
I think maybe early in my career, my cybersecurity career, I had a agency I was working with that, well, if I say that, it'll give away who it is, but who had some very mission critical aspects of the transportation space. Um,
Okay.
not the standard transportation space. So, not necessarily commercial or consumer transportation. But anyway, they had been asking us to manipulate and create a bespoke version of our um, custom off-the-shelf tool, which by design means that every time there's a new update to it, we have to rebuild the whole thing again.
Oh,
So yeah, so it automatically brings its challenges. So and typically in those days, I think some of those things are have been resolved. And this is another life of mine earlier. Updates, as we all do software updates for everything, we would just push it out and their people would update it and everything would crash because their solution was not the standard solution. We had to manually adjust that. And I've had a few phone calls with that leadership where I'm pulling the phone away from my ear because he's yelling at me about everything is broken. Uh, and that's, you guys need to fix this today. This is mission critical. This is national security level issue. And my thought process was always like, you wanted this way.
yeah.
So we're trying to address this. Yes, we'll have to educate our internal systems not to push out, but to schedule updates with your team. And your team needs not to update when they receive it until we say we're going to do this together. So it is created a thought process in my mind after 4 or 5 phone calls like that, and 3 days from now I've got to get on a plane to go see this person for him to yell at me from behind his desk in person about what we aren't doing. I have decided for the most part I really don't want to deal with bespoke custom builds anymore, anywhere. S- the- Yes. Well, it certainly wasn't my fault personally, but I'm the face of the company to them, so take that beating.
I understand. I understand. We face that all the time as salespeople. Well, so what are some patterns that you normally observe, when it comes to breaches and security over the years? Like when do they typically begin? I mean, it's always a human slip up as opposed to a system going wrong or a glitch in the system. Mostly, maybe someone was supposed to do something every day as on a regular basis, and they didn't. They maybe just skipped one day, and that was cause of a breach. Uh, is that the regular pattern that you've seen, or are they more unique to each incident, or is there even a pattern?
There's certainly patterns for sure. The adversarial community is always seeking patterns within the different cultures and through maybe phishing emails, as you might be alluding to. Certain emails that look like and smell like something that's usual, and it's actually not. Those are a large. I don't even know the percentages of what those are in the lexicon of attacks, but they are significant. Yes, they're looking for just one person to make a mistake, and they're sending out tens and hundreds of thousands of these. They just need, to these some of these companies, and in my case, some of these government agencies, sometimes millions of these in a day, and they just need one person to make a mistake. So it's a a high reward, low risk scenario because as we continue in this world, culturally, people understand to interrogate emails and text messages a little bit better. But having said that, the community, the adversarial community, has become more aggressive in their approaches to things. And one of the least talked about areas of vulnerability is somewhat related to the subject matter that we just talked about. That is release updates, dot releases on technology of solutions, the big name solutions that we all use for communications and daily business works. So every time they do updates, and many of them will tell you that the user experience is most important to them, and they will do and provide minimal levels of security. And often when they're sending out those updates to, whatever version on your phone or on your computer or MacBook or tablet, might have a bug in it that has a vulnerability. And by the time that update hits the street, the adversarial community already knows that there's a bug and a vulnerability that's there for them to expose. Um, and the juxtaposition for that is a lot of those releases are bringing in new features and new updates, and they're also fixing old issues that were vulnerabilities. So there's a two-pronged approach there. If you choose not to update those that software, you're a vulnerability, which the adversaries are going to attack. And then for the new one that's out there, they're also going to attack that one, and they're going to scan the world and try to attack those things. That's one area that's huge for them because they can automate that. And especially now with AI and large language models, they can multiply their approach globally uh, to the attack surface.
So basically, they will exploit every opportunity, and there is no room for error, right?
That is correct.
Right. See, that's the part that normally never gets covered. Where a lot of people obsess over the breach, but they ignore the warning signs. Uh, Maybe it's like someone who did something and they weren't afraid to report it, and just because they didn't want to look dumb. So that's where I wanted to go next, because the way you're talking about cybersecurity, it's not entirely a technical field. It's got a large human side to it, and what people may just assume that will happen, most likely will not happen, and they overlook that. So if you could implant one shift, maybe a mindset or even cultural change into every such agency or company that you're working with or have worked with, what would that one thing be, to dramatically reduce risk? Uh, is it the way that they train people who handle software or the application of it, or the way they're handling their shame or fear, which leads to them not reporting it? What would that one change, which would basically make that paradigm shift from, inefficiency to being, spot on every time?
Good question. There's really, I don't know that there is one thing other than sharing with the community, and I'll touch on how the public sector has to address those issues. There's a legal aspect, there's political or policy aspect to it, but for
Mhm.
general people, as I tell people, and I've said this from stage a few times, that everybody, cybersecurity is a team sport, so everyone has a level of responsibility with their own information. So I would advise each and every individual, whether it be their personal data or especially their company data, if they work for a company or their own company, is to do the basic blocking and tackling. And if you don't understand or don't know the text that you're receiving from whom, or email doesn't look familiar, don't click on it. Just delete it. Or, if it's somebody important or something of importance, they'll send another. They'll come to you again. Um, but from a public sector perspective, And a policy perspective, I know in the US and I think as well in the EU, and there's several other countries who have forms of this as well. You have to have a plan of action in place because the attack is not an if, it's when. And you have to have a plan of action that says how you're going to address your customer base that they have their information may have been exposed in a cyber attack that they experienced. So, and you have to do that within, I think it's 48 or 72 hours of that event. Post triage, all of that. So there's a level that, as a business person, business owner, you have to have that in place, and you have to have typically, they advise having, attorneys maybe craft a message, and you have to have recovery effort of how you're going to, mitigate the issues of your exposure of your client base in general, and what might have been exposed, much less mitigate the issues of this doesn't happen again to you.
Correct. Correct. That is a culture that we definitely need to foster. I mean, at all levels, not only I feel it's not only for such, large stakeholders. Like, it should be pretty much in even commercial houses that, they should look over that. So let's just shift a little bit, from this, but not too far, because the next part still has everything to do with leadership. Now, you've spent a lot of years navigating these public sector systems and their ecosystems, cybersecurity frameworks, and national scale risk models. But this is a different kind of a responsibility that you've taken up now as part of the LoopLynks jury, which is about evaluating people. So, what is it that actually pulled you toward the work of recognition? What made you say, okay, I want to help decide, who deserves to be honored for their leadership, their vision, or the impact they've created, their legacy that they've created. Since we're at LoopLynks, we're looking for something more subtle, something that is not really, identified by data or maybe a blinking light, something that is abstract, maybe if nothing else, ripples, not just results. So, how did it come to you that this is something that you'd be really interested in and you wanted to be part of this?
Sure, I have most of my life, and having been involved in some leadership things, I have always been one innately to celebrate others. It's just part of my innate makeup to communicate with people and say, I see you. I see you. I'm acknowledging you. And if you're doing good things, especially, not that, if it's very flashy or whatever, that's an issue, but if you're in a scenario that you're doing some really good things for people, outside of yourself, and maybe you don't expect anything in return other than glory of being able to help people, as they should be acknowledged and recognized for doing such, or doing something outside of themselves that may not directly impact them on any level. So I feel the honor to be able to do that. I do it every day to a certain extent for people. You sort of notice things about people and will acknowledge them and say, "Hey, that's good work," or, "Nice job. I know that what you're doing is hard. I've done it. Nice job." So I look forward to that opportunity.
Yes, and it goes a long way. It just brightens up someone's day doing that to someone every day. And so, how do you, as a person, as Shawn Cooper, how do you actually differentiate between someone who's like, flashy and successful, and as opposed to someone in the background who's probably really working hard and building something that's meaningful and durable and creating real impact on people as opposed to someone who's just in the news or the flashlight?
It's a good question. I don't know that there's a single answer for that because I know I have seen and I've been around, certain people who are quote unquote flashy, who are actually doing some good things, who may provide some level of drama, and I don't necessarily mean that in a negative sense, but excitement scenario. So, uh, sometimes it really depends on how they're using that flash. Is it a look at me scenario, or is it more of a celebration that's out of the norm of success? So, as opposed to the person behind the scenes who may or may not be getting any acknowledgement, because there's always typically someone who's a supporter of the face of whatever. There's a face of something. As I mentioned, I referenced I'm, being that client interface, I'm the face of the company. There's always people behind you who are, if not propping you up or providing that base of support for you that allows you to continue to move forward. So there's a nice blend of both of those type of people that can be and should be recognized for their successful endeavors.
I couldn't agree more. So when you're in that jury seat, and you have been, so what are you actually scanning for in a certain personality? Like, is it kind of a gut check kind of way that you do it, or is it something that stands out, like their courage? Is it conviction to their role that you're looking at, or just the way that someone carries their responsibility when no one's looking and no one's really rewarding them for it? What is it that really catches your eye and kind of gives you those goosebumps and says, yes, this is someone who is a person of high integrity who's really going to make an impact?
My first answer is yes. Sort of all of those categories. There's a little bit of all that goes into it, and yeah, I mean, ideally, what I see, and even when I've been in some of these environments where there's recognition, and I hear the stories of what people are doing in certain spaces. As somebody who's a parent of a child with special needs, anytime I hear anybody in that space and they're doing these broad things that society doesn't necessarily fully address or fully fund, and these people are doing those things, as um, anecdotally, I know what it takes for parents and people around those communities have to go through. So automatically I know, okay, this person is carrying a lot of weight. And, or, if I understand the environments that these people are winning in, and they're affecting many, many lives and communities with whatever they do. It's like, hey, okay, again, I see you, salute, um, you know, you got my thumb.
Correct. Great. So basically, recognition and real recognition, it just isn't about, I would say, just hardcore performance or numbers. It's about a presence, your presence in people's lives. It's about people who are, they're rising, and they're also lifting others as they're rising. These are, I feel, and I believe you agree, that these are the real leaders, people whose decisions, they're not just strategic, they're also soulful, they're felt. They're being measured more than just pure numbers and metrics. And that's why, what we're trying to do here at LoopLynks is we're trying to recognize those people and honor those kind of people who are really making an impact in people's lives and transforming them. And that's exactly the reason why having someone like you in this session, who's been able to, over the course of their life, see beyond beyond just the mere surface, that isn't just valuable for us, it's even necessary for us. So that kind of concludes our evening with you, Shawn. Thank you so much for being a part of this show. It was a pleasure speaking with you and getting to know all this. And you have a nice evening ahead, Shawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.